All right, everybody, what's going on? And welcome to another edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. Of course, I am your tour guide around the swag, C Wells, coming at you. And we're just gonna talk a little football today, man. We're gonna start getting ready for the upcoming season. Right now, we are in the midst of spring practice. A lot of teams are going on with their springs right now. Alabama A&M actually had their spring game yesterday, so we are in the midst of spring football, preseason football, whatever you want to call it, getting ready for the upcoming season. So we're going to talk a little bit about, how I feel about a couple of things about all the teams in the East Division. Not really going to be a super duper in-depth show, but just kind of want to start to put my thoughts out there, and I'll flesh them out as we move on through the preseason. So with all that being said, man, you can see the socials on the screen down below. You can go ahead and check those out. Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76, and the email is swagtalk76@gmail.com. So you can hit those up if you like. Also, if you haven't done so already, won't you please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you can be alerted to all the content that I upload. I do tend to drop a few videos here and there off of my normal schedule, which is Wednesday and Sunday, and Swag Smoke Live on Thursday. So anything throughout the week, I tend to drop. So you might want to hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted to that kind of stuff. Like the videos, feel free to share them and hit the comments and let me know what you think about this upcoming season. Any questions that you have about any team in the East Division. And so, with all that being said, let's go ahead and hop directly into this, man. We're gonna start off with the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. Obviously, preseason thoughts. The most important thought that I have is the quarterback position. I think most people, they know that Alabama A&M had a multi-year starter at quarterback. So when you lose a guy like Akil Glass, you're gonna lose a huge chunk of your offense and your production, your leadership. This kid's been starting as a freshman, so that's like 4+ years of the same guy coming in every year. You already know who you have at that position, and you're able to build your offense around him. The reports from Alabama in the spring game was that Xavier Langford, uh, young quarterback, had a good game. He led his team to a W. They scored 3 touchdowns in that game, and Quincy Casey had some flashes as well. So that's a spot that's really gonna be a tight battle. I don't even know if it's gonna be determined in spring. And Jaron Williams from Miami is supposed to be transferring in as well. So that those are 3 guys plus anybody else that's on the roster who may be stepping up to the plate. So I feel like this is going to be a battle that may not be won in the spring. It may be won in fall practice. So this is a position that you really want to keep your eyes on right now. A quarterback battle is, if as long as it's guys are progressing. I think a quarterback battle is a good thing. You don't want to have it linger too long, and because nobody took the reins. If it lingers because there's a battle back and forth, then you got a couple guys who may be ready. But this offense should still be good. I don't know if they'll be as explosive as they have been the last 2 years, but they should still be good. I mean, you still have a guy like Ibrahim returning at receiver, who is a big play guy. Terrell Gardner is a guy who can also make some plays for you. They did, lose D. Anderson and Odu Hilaire. Hilaire went to Bowling Green in the transfer portal, but they're gonna have guys that make the skill positions. I don't think are ever gonna be a problem. I think they have guys who are gonna step up and take the reins in that position. I mean, this is an offense that averaged 111 yards per game. A couple years ago, they had they really had a solid running attack, and they were able to make a move and get still keep that running game going, even though losing do everything back a couple years ago. So I think that this offense will still be formidable. I don't know if it will be as explosive, especially not early in the season. This may be a case of the team kind of finding their way throughout the beginning of the season, and then working out the kinks throughout the season, and by mid-season, end of season, they're clicking. I mean, division is tough. There's some tough games. There are no easy games in this division, honestly. So, they're going to have their work cut out for them. And we'll see how that goes. Now, defensively, that's, to me, the biggest problem, issue with this team right now is defensively. Coming off of a season where they allowed 35 points per game and over 188 yards rushing per game and over 237 yards passing per game. So they averaged a total of 425 yards per game, including 5.8 yards per rush. So the defense just did not gel. I know they had some injuries. They had brought in a lot of guys in the portal. I think a few guys never really got healthy, and they just, really just got gashed throughout the season. Now, they had a couple performances late in the season where they played a little bit better, but this defense was what it was. This was a team that was going to have to score, 40 points per game, 30, 40 points every game to win. I mean, they averaged 37 as an offense, and, they needed all of those points pretty much in every game. So that, they brought in a ton of guys this year out the portal. They had a signing class of 38 guys. I think the majority of those were defensive guys, and the majority of that was portal guys. So they're still hitting that portal hard, trying to, fill in the spots. Some people say they're looking better right now. They're looking more athletic and rangy in the secondary. But, it's really hard to make heads or tails with any team in the spring because, you're going, your guys against your guys. But we're going to see, how this works out as the season progresses because their defense really, kind of was the issue in a lot of their games. I mean, the offense was more than well enough to win games, in spite of how their defense played. Now, the defense, I won't say they were bad, but they just could not make, they could not make plays when they needed to make them. The offense bailed them out of a lot of situations. So that's an issue that's gonna have to be fixed. But I think that this team can fix these issues. They're just gonna have to really be stouter on defense, especially early. I think that defense is gonna have to come to play early. I mean, they start off with 2 FBS games, and then they play Austin Peay, which is a tough FCS opponent. So they have 3 tough games, really 4, because they play FAMU the next week. So that month of September is very, very tough. That defense is going to be tested in every one of those games. So they really need to find a way to help the offense get going because there's going to be a lot of transition. You don't have a guy with a lot of starting experience on at that spot really, other than maybe Jaron Williams. But this offense is going to take time to kind of click. So the defense is going to have to kind of grow up really fast. So that's pretty much how I feel about Alabama A&M. I think that this team is a team that can challenge for the division, but it's going to be, to me, the key to them challenging for the division is going to be how well that defense plays, honestly, because I think that they are going to be the unit that gets this team going early. If they struggle early, then I think that the offense will have their problems because this team has the potential. They have the coaching staff to get it done, but they're replacing some key guys. And I mean, replacing a 4-year starter at quarterback is huge. A record-setting guy, just not a guy that was back there at quarterback. This was a record-setting guy that really stirred the drink, as they like to say, of this offense. So replacing him, it's gonna be a team effort. They're gonna have to, run the ball a little bit more. They're gonna probably quarterback, will probably be a factor in the run game as well. And the defense is gonna have to step up and kind of carry the weight for a bit. So that's how, those are kind of my preseason thoughts on Alabama A&M. And like I said, we'll go more in depth as we move on throughout the spring and the summer, talking about each team. So again, Alabama A&M 18-6 was their maroon white game. Maroon won 18-6. Xavier Langford quarterback the maroon team. He had a pretty solid day. I hadn't seen any stats really, but I've seen a few highlights, and I thought he looked pretty good, moving the ball through the air, a couple of nice runs, ran a touchdown. So we'll see, what where they go from there. Moving on to the next team, and this team to me is kind of an enigma, and for multiple reasons. That's Alabama State. They're bringing in a new head coach, Coach Eddie Robinson, who everybody knows is the real estate agent. Um, that's the first question for me is, what is he gonna do? I mean, this is a guy who comes in, no real experience. He's learning. He's gonna be learning on the job. He's taking over a team that went 5-6, and really was erratic at best. Defensively, they were pretty stout, but they're losing some key pieces to their defense. So that's gonna be a key. They're losing the defensive coordinator, bringing in a new coordinator. So those are some issues that are already there. Offensively, this team doesn't necessarily have an identity, so that's gonna be a key. How they're gonna handle any kind of philosophy on offense. There's just so many questions about this team that I don't think the spring is gonna really change much. I think that spring game is April 23rd. So I don't really even think you can take a lot from any of this, because I think you're not gonna know what Alabama State is until you get into the season. Um they recruited pretty well, so that I think they did a pretty good job with bringing in some guys, and they're gonna need something, because offensively this was a team that averaged 21 points per game. They averaged 112 yards rushing. So if you know me, I like running the football. So that's a number that's definitely going to have to improve, regardless of what your philosophy is. Passing, they were averaging 190 yards per game. They had 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and they could not establish a quarterback. Ryan Nettles came in at the start of the season, coming off of a pretty good spring, just could not really put it together. Joe Owens came in, played a little bit. Um, they played a few quarterbacks, so that was an issue. Miles Crawley came in as a young freshman. He came in and made some plays for them as well. Um, this team is losing Ezra Gray, who was that do everything back. Didn't have a great season last year, but he's a guy who can hurt you in the return game as well. So that's a big loss on their offense. Shakori Merritt returns, and he's probably the bigger back out of the two. So he's a guy who I think you can count on to carry the load a little bit more. He was actually the team's leading rusher this season, so I expect a lot from him to be able to make some things happen offensively and in the run game. Defensively, they are a defense that's gonna get in your chest, so to speak. They're real physical against the run. They're losing Christian Clark in the middle, who is a guy who is just a fire plug in the middle, hard to move. That's something that's gonna have to improve. Now, Coach Robinson is a defensive guy, so I expect the defense to be kind of where it is. I don't think they're gonna take too many steps back, but offensively, Alabama State has not had an identity for a few years. They've, some years they can run okay and can't pass well. Other years they can pass okay and can't run well. So that's going to be the issue. The offensive line was young. Still, they were young in the spring, and they were still growing. So they have another year together. So they should be a bit better. But it's all going to be on the sidelines to me right now. If you want to look at the biggest question for Alabama State, is on the sidelines, and that's not a knock against Coach Robinson, but when you get bringing in a coach who hasn't done it, you always gonna have questions. And when it's coming with a team that did not have a great season, that's the kind of thing that you have to take into account. So that's the biggest issue. And their schedule is not easy. They do get Howard to start. That's a game that I don't really know a lot about Howard at this point. But by the time we get closer to the season, I will be then research them a bit more. But that's gonna be a game that first game, neutral site. MEAC SWAC challenge. SWAC hasn't had a lot of success in that, so that's a little bit of added pressure right there. Miles to open up the home slate. Miles is not gonna be a pushover. They lost 14-13 to Alabama State last year, UCLA is a money game. Then Prairie View is a team we don't know right now what they are going to be about, but they don't have an easy schedule. Honestly, I wouldn't even call. I wouldn't say they have an easy game on their schedule, but the first few games of their schedule are very tough, and it's going to be a tough road to navigate as a new coach, and not knowing a lot about what this team wants to do, especially offensively with their philosophy. So I think that we're gonna have to take a game by game approach to this team. I think um, we won't really know anything about this team until we get probably until November. I know that sounds crazy, but I would be weary of any early success, because you just don't know if that's going to be able to be maintained. I would also still be cautious of any any shortcomings early, because this team may be able to put it together. But we'll know a lot about this team once we really um, get into the fall. So I'm eager to see what this team does, and like I said, there's not a lot to really take away from them at this point. They are a total enigma, and we're gonna all figure out where they are and what they are as we move forward, and we'll figure it out all together. Moving on to our next team, and that's Bethune Cookman. This team came off of a 2-9 season. They had a very horrible start to their season. I think they started off 0-8, I believe. Just could not get anything going. They lost some games that they had a chance to win. A few games they fell behind big and came back and made them closer. To me, they were the masters of the making the score look closer than what it was type of team. They kind of had that way of finding a way to get back into the game as this as before it slipped away, but not enough to win. So this team, they have been a successful program the last few years. So this is a different taste for them for in quite a while. So it's interesting, number one, to see how this team responds to getting back up off the mat. Um, they're bringing a new offense coordinator, Mike Canellis. He's a guy who is he's a long time offensive coordinator, QB coach type of guy. So I expect him to make some good waves with this offense. Offensively, this team they had some players, man. They had some talent, and they still have some talent, but they just could not put it together. They averaged 114 yards on the ground per game, 4.1 yards per rush, which is not bad, especially for the amount of yardage that they gained per game. 211 through the air per game. They had 14 interceptions and 18 touchdowns. Playing two quarterbacks, Shannon Patrick, who was a UAPB transfer, he's gone now, and Devin Black. I think Black returns, so that at least gives them some leeway. He started the last few games of the season, so we'll see if he's returning, if he's able to keep a hold of that job. Um, so it's really gonna be tough. It's gonna be a situation where I think this team they have to rebuild. They have to rebuild, number one, and rebound. They have to get themselves back on track, and get back to playing Bethune Cookman football. They did add Jalen Jones, who was the former University of Florida, Jackson State, Mississippi Delta Community College quarterback. So he's gonna come in and really challenge for that position. He's a guy who ran for 235 yards and 3 TDs at Mississippi Delta, threw for 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he's a mobile guy. He's a guy who can really run the ball. He's not the best passer, but he's a big body guy. And I mean, he's been around, so he knows the game as far as preparation. So I think he's a guy who's going to step in and probably take this job and make the plays for them. They also added a big time running back who ran for over 4,000 yards in high school. He's a big back, so I think that they're a guy who these are guys who are going to really step up and help this offense get better. Defensively, they lose Ontario Johnson, so that's the top big time linebacker. So that's a spot that they really are going to be looking to to add to fix. So I think this team is gonna be. I think they're gonna be tougher. They're gonna be they should be better. I don't know how much better they'll be, but they should be better. I expect this team to challenge, for that mid level in the division. Defensively, they allowed over 36 points per game, so that's obviously going to have to improve. 170 yards rushing on the ground allowed and 240, 249 through the air. They only had 6 interceptions on the season, so they didn't do a great job with takeaways. But is Coach Sims on the hot seat? That's another question that I have. I know a lot of people feel like monetarily Bethune Cookman can't really do a lot, so maybe he's safe in that aspect. But a bad start to the season, just like last year, is gonna be detrimental to this team, and that's gonna be a situation where are we able to see where they go from there? Are they gonna be able to keep him if he doesn't have another great season? Is his job in jeopardy? That's probably one of the biggest questions that I have about this team. They cannot afford to play the way they did for the bulk of the season, and their schedule obviously starts off against the Miami Hurricanes. That's a very tough game. They host South Carolina State and Grambling before they go to Alabama and Tennessee State, and then they host Jackson State. So those first 6 games are very tough, and they could easily not win any of them. Grambling should be much improved. Tennessee State, they're in their second year under Eddie George. South Carolina State, they're a contending team. They're MEAC champs. Alabama A&M should be pretty good. And of course, Jackson State is JSU, who is the reigning SWAC champs. And they play Mississippi Valley on the road, which is a team that they lost to. So those first 7 games are not easy. And honestly, that is no easy game on the schedule. Now, they did beat Alcorn, but they have to go to them. And obviously, they close out the Florida Classic. But this is not going to be an easy time for this team. And I don't know what really to expect from them. I just think that they need to really just, if their offense can get better, then I think a lot of things will fall into place. It'll take some pressure off their defense, and it'll help them. It'll help them improve. So, moving on to our next team that I want to talk about is FAMU. The Rattlers had a very, very strong season this past season. Ultimately, going to the FCS playoffs, they lost first round to. They lost in the first round to Southeastern Louisiana. So they lost their first game to Jackson State, but they were able to get back on track. They only lost one other game after that point against USF, and then they went on a winning streak to close out the regular season before losing in the playoffs. Obviously, to me, the thing that most people, if you're a FAMU person or just anybody who has followed SWAC football this year, that the key thing for FAMU is quarterback play. A lot of people were not really high on Rashawn McKay. I thought he was I thought he was a good quarterback. He wasn't great. He probably was more of a game manager. He really, had a really solid numbers. 211 yards, 211 completions, 364 attempts, 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, completed 57% of his passes, 2,457 yards through the air. So he really did not make a lot of mistakes. He wasn't flashy, and I think that's something that a lot of people, not so much that he wasn't flashy, but I think a lot of people feel like he didn't do as much as he probably should have. It took him a while to get a solid hold on the job, and the Junior Maratovic was a guy who came in against Jackson State, and he played in a couple games after that. He looked pretty solid. Cameron Sapp's another name that you kind of have to keep an eye out on. But I think this is McKay's job to lose, really. And I don't think he's gonna lose this job, but I think it's his job, and I expect him to hold that job down. How much he improves is probably going to be the difference between where this team is at now and where they can be. I mean, obviously, finishing where they did, it is not, how much better can you get? I mean, you only lost one SWAC game. So you know what I'm saying? This was a very good season, even with a young quarterback going through his growing pains. The running game was much improved over the past season, but they lose their leading rusher, Bishop Bonnet. He's gone. So Terrell Jennings is a guy um, who can step up. He was the second leading rusher, had 544 yards and 5 touchdowns, averaged 4.9 yards per carry. So that's a guy who I expect to kind of take the reins and really help this offense get going. Um, but like I said, all starts and goes with the quarterback, and that's just how a lot of people view it. That's gonna really make some things better for this team if the offense can keep going. Xavier Smith returns. He's a grad student at FAMU this year. So he's a key element to this offense. He's a guy that I think is a big time receiver, and he's gonna help this team, even better. Um, Jamarish Reed's a guy who's a return guy, also a really great receiver. Um, they have a lot of skill talent. That's not a problem. So I think, to me, FAMU doesn't have a lot of issues to really kind of worry about. I think this team is going to be fine. They do lose their offensive coordinator KJ Black, but I think Coach Simmons is going to, if he doesn't fully take that role, I think he's going to be a big factor in that role. So that offense should not falter at all. Um, defensively, they're still going to be solid. They return the Buck Buchanan Award winner Isaiah Land. So that's a guy who's going to keep this offense going. Now they did lose some defensive backs. They lost Marquise Bell and Collier. So those are guys who are going to be tough to replace. They did lose also. They lost Savion Williams, defensive lineman. But I think this defense is going to be good. I don't know if they're going to be as stout as they were this past season. They were one of the top two defenses in the league. Between them and Jackson State, they allowed 17 points per game. They allowed 94 yards rushing per game and 183 yards passing per game, and had 13 interceptions to 12 touchdowns. So I think this team is going to be, I think they're going to be solid. I mean, there's not a lot to really take away from FAMU. I think they will be viewed as, depending on how you look at JSU, they're going to be viewed as 1 or 2 coming into the preseason once they do the preseason polls at media day. But I don't really expect a lot of issues from this team. I think they're going to continue. Now the schedule it starts really tough. They open up at North Carolina, then they play Jackson State and Miami before coming home to host Albany State. So they could easily start off this season 1-2. They do host Alabama A&M, and then they host Valley. So before they go to South Carolina State, so they have some games that are going to be tough to navigate. But if they can get past the JSU game, then this team will have a lot of opportunities to really have a very, very successful season. But I personally, I wish that JSU game was later in the season, because I feel like that's just the division championship game, and for it to be factored in that early, is gonna, it doesn't do a lot of justice to either team, honestly. But they do have some tough games ahead of them. A couple of teams on that schedule later in the year who we don't really know right now how good they're gonna be, but it's possible. They're gonna be tough games. It is Grambling and Southern. They do host Grambling, so I mean they go to Grambling and host Southern. So those are 2 games that are going to be tougher to navigate. And of course, the Florida Classic. You just never know how that's going to turn out. I mean, FAMU did pick up their first win this year in quite some time. So can they keep that going? That's going to be the issue. But I think that this team is going to be a solid team. I think they're gonna be a contender for the conference championship and the division championship, conference championship. If they falter, maybe they can get another postseason berth. But I expect this team to continue to roll. Not a lot of major questions, but we'll see how they do. Moving on to our next team, and that's Jackson State. Um, Obviously, this team was a very good. I mean, defensively, this team they were just great. that you could not move the football against them. Nobody really had much success against this team defensively. You talk about a unit that allowed 14 points per game. They allowed 99 yards per game rushing and 204 through the air. 157 through the air, 14 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Very solid defense. Really electric passing game with Shedeur Sanders. They did lose Warren Newman and Josh Lanier and Keith Corbin, so they lost three of their top receivers. But they still have guys, coming back like Malachi Wideman, Trevante Rucker. So they still have guys who can hurt you, and this team is gonna be very solid in the passing game. That's just the way that they're built. They're bringing in a new coordinator. So to me, the key on that end is gonna be, is he allowed to fully take the reins of the offense? Is he gonna be a guy that kind of has to go, go with what they have? How much is he gonna be able to put his own stamp on the offense? Is it gonna just be, what it's already been with, with his few wrinkles thrown in there? But the key to me, obviously on offense, is the running game, and by extension of that, the offensive line. The running game, I thought could have been really good, but the line did not do a good job of run blocking on for the season. So if they can improve that, which they really recruited hard on the offensive line, I think that they have the talent in the backfield to make some plays. So but this team goes as the passing game goes. If they went 8-0 in conference by virtue of they went 8-0 in conference rushing the ball for an average of 89 yards per game. So they don't necessarily need to run the football, but it definitely helps. It keeps some pressure off of your quarterback, maybe limits some of the hits that he takes. So the offensive line, if they improve, then this offense is going to be even better, and that's a scary thought for anybody. Defensively, they may take a step back, not much. I don't think they're going to take too much of a step back because they brought in some more guys to fill those holes. But losing a guy like James Houston, who was a serious problem, as his nickname was, they're gonna be a team that's really still tough to move the ball against. They're a very aggressive defense, and I don't expect too much difference from this team. This team is, this coaching staff's got a year under his belt. Coach Prime has a full fall season under his belt, and now he's going through a full spring practice. And this is what this team is. They're gonna be a tough out for anybody at any point. So I don't expect a lot of changes. To me, the key is gonna be, how much more can this team improve? How much better can they be? They didn't lose a SWAC game, so can they continue to win SWAC games? Or are they gonna drop a game somewhere? They had a couple close calls that they were able to pull out. Is this team going to continue to rise, or are they going to plateau? I don't see any downward streak at all. But can they continue to get better and keep focused game in, game out? And they didn't necessarily start games fast. Can they start games a little bit faster and not need that second half surge to win most of their games? I don't have a lot of questions about this team at this point. I think they are the hands down preseason leaders in the conference, so not a lot to really say is an issue for them. But we'll see. We'll see how they do. Taking a quick look at their schedule, they open up at FAMU against FAMU in Miami. They go to Memphis to play Tennessee State. Then they play Grambling. So 3 tough games. We don't know what Grambling's going to be, but Hugh Jackson, is obviously recruiting well at Grambling, and those guys are getting ready. So then, I circled a Campbell game just because that's an unknown opponent for most people. I want to really see how that team does. They have a nice recruiting class as well. So they don't, the schedule is kind of broken up. But this team is the team that everybody's gunning for, so I don't expect that to change with this team right now. So moving on to our final East Division team, and that's Mississippi Valley. This is a team that a lot of people, are considering to be a dark horse type of team. Not necessarily a team that's gonna win the division or really challenge, but I think that a lot of people think that this can be a 6 or 7 win team. Me personally, I'm not quite sure. Um, Valley is a team that just, it's tough. And Coach Dancy's been doing a really good job of putting this team together. But first and foremost, offensively, this team has to be able to push the ball down the field. I think that was one of the issues that they had as far as moving the football. They could, they had a great running back. They have a great running back in Caleb Johnson, but this team really just could not really push the ball down the field. With the vertical passing game, and that was a problem. In some games that was a key problem to take the pressure off of your running game. They're bringing in they have a gang of quarterbacks here, so we'll see. If somebody can take the reins there. They have some really nice pieces at receiver, so there are there's a I like what Valley has. I like what they're building. They brought in about 4 or 5 receivers, all of them 6 foot plus, guys who are productive from the level that they came from. So they are looking to improve this team. Um, the key is gonna be, what can they do as far as consistency on offense. Defensively, they're losing. They're losing some big pieces on that defense, and that's gonna be tough. Can they replace those guys they lost? That's gonna be the key issue. Because defensively they kept themselves in a few games, but they don't have the depth, and they tended to wear down late in games. But obviously, I think Valley is just gonna be a week by week thing. How much can they improve, and how much better can they be, and can they really be a consistent team that can finish in the middle of the pack? Because I don't think they are gonna get anywhere near the top of the division, and that's not a knock against Valley. That's just the reality of what the top of the division looks like. If they can, mix it up with Alabama State and Valley, Alabama State, Bethune Cookman, and get in a 4th place spot, that's a W for Valley. I mean, you can build on that and keep yourself in the mix. Now, if you can steal a game somewhere, who knows where you can end up. But right now, Valley is they're gonna be challenged straight out the gate. They have Tarleton State on the road, Austin P on the road, and Delta State at home. They're gonna be challenged out the gate, and then they open up swag play at Jackson State and at FAMU. They don't open up easy, man. There's nowhere on this schedule to start off that allows them any room for error, and that's gonna be key to the season. All corn at home, and that's not gonna be an easy game at Alabama State. That and versus Bethune Cookman are probably the 2 games that they really need to win in the middle of the season. Then they close out at home against Alabama and them at Southern, and at home against Prairie View. So that start of the season, man, is relentless, and you're gonna find out a bit about what Valley is made of. If they can be close in these games, I don't really see them winning many of those games. But if they can be close in a lot of those games, then this team will be at least a factor later in the season. Now, that's that Owens. 0-5 or 0-6 start is legitimate. I mean, they may steal a game somewhere, but the early portion of that season schedule is so hard, and that's going to be a tough task for them. If they can win a couple games in that stretch, then I like the chances later. This is going to be a team that their record may not be as good as they are. Sometimes teams don't have a good record, but the team is better than their record appears. Now, I mean, obviously the saying is you are what your record is, but sometimes these teams can finish a season with not a good record, but they are better statistically. I think that's going to be the key for Valley is to improve. I mean, the running game was probably the best they had in quite some time. They averaged 143 yards per game. They passed the ball for 167 yards per game. Defensively, they still giving up a lot of big plays. They allowed over 245 yards per game through the air and 146 on the ground. 19 points per game scored by Valley, and opponent scored over 30. So those numbers have to improve on both sides for this team to seriously be a contender. Now, you know, the last time Valley won at least 5 games, I think, was 2012. And they did it. I like to say they did it with smoke and mirror because they didn't really have a good offense and they didn't have a good defense. But they had a couple of guys who were special on special teams and were capable playmakers on offense. And if they can, you know, find that kind of element, I think this team will be improved. But their record may not look that way. So if Valley finishes, you know, 4-7, 3-8, don't be discouraged because the schedule is very hard. Valley schedule is always hard, but this is a very hard schedule, especially all in a row at the start of the season. So I'm eagerly waiting to see what Valley does. That spring game is April 9th. I'm gonna keep my eyes on that. But like I said, there's not a lot to take from anybody's spring game. Don't get too hype on anybody. If they just ball out in the spring game, don't get too down on anybody. Certain units struggle in the spring game. There's not a lot to really take from that. So that's gonna do it for today's show. We'll be back on Wednesday when I do my preseason thoughts and questions on the West Division. And boy, that's gonna be something because there's a lot of change in the West Division. That division is honestly up for grabs. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday, Thursday. Swag Smoke coming at you live 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday we return with another edition of Swag Talk. So with that being said, I'm your tour guide, C. Wells. Stopping this bus, man. Y'all can hop on off, and I'll holler at y'all on Wednesday. Peace.